Hello, and welcome back. Last time we talked about this, we laid out some of the ground rules for what we were going to do for our project. We established what's to be expected, what's not to be expected here. Just a quick recap on that from this back up on the screen here. I'm not a professional programmer, not an artist, not a sound designer. And primarily, this isn't designed to be a tutorial series, but you can expect to hopefully learn some stuff, and likely we'll learn some stuff together. Today we're going to be going over the fundamentals of the project itself. We're going to be looking at what we want to do for design-wise as a broader picture. Something we're hoping to iron out, so then we can start building pieces of that puzzle. I'll go over a couple of concepts that will be useful in this design, as well as their broader implications and what they are. So why don't we jump right into it? So last time I explained that most of Godot was set up so that everything is a scene. A scene is built up of nodes, and as we figured out, nodes are the lifeblood of everything. There are a ton of predetermined nodes in here, all doing different things, all coming with different sets of attributes and abilities and such as that. But these are not the end all. You can work with them, you can build different stuff with them. You can kind of make custom nodes because you can attach a script to any kind of node and then differentiate its behavior between whatever. So theoretically, you could just have a base node 2D as we have for our base, this is our test scene, but our main scene just has a 2D node, which will just be the root of everything. Attaching anything to that, we could do whatever. And as we saw last time, we can attach a script to that, which can then further define and extend behavior. In light of that, so every scene is made up of nodes, and when you instantiate a scene into another scene, so in this case we could add the test scene we made, it would become a node. Right now we didn't give it a name, so it's just node 2D, but this is still a scene. It has everything that we put into it, which was just an animated sprite for testing purposes. But all of its guts are hidden from us here, other than what we might see on our properties inspector over here. Looking at that as the basis for everything, we could probably break everything down to any kind of depth of scenes and such. My basic plan for the game is to follow a state machine kind of idea. If you're unfamiliar with what a state machine is, or a finite state machine, or what states are in general, let's do a quick overlook here. So in programming terms, or I guess in general terms, a state is a set of conditions something is in, what it's actively doing. So if you think about a character in a game, it could have an idle state where it's not moving, it could have a running state, it could have a walking state, it could have an attacking state, so on and so forth. So giving the broad view of the game, what I'm hoping to do is to have 3 states. So these 3 states are going to be as such, which probably don't need to be as massively big as they are. So we're going to have our menu. So anytime we're in a menu, let's say, well, it's like the tiniest font in the universe. Anytime we're browsing the main menu, we've just started the game up, we're going to be here. Every time we open a character menu, we'll probably be here. Anything what you might determine as a menu would be in here. So we'll also have what we'll call the battle map. And on the battle map, it's going to be stuff such as literally having the primary game screen. So most of our stuff is going to take place here. When we're on the battle map, this is what will load the level, so we'll keep building down from there as well. All the characters will exist on here, stuff like that. And I'm thinking, but I'm not positively sure, we may have an exploration or quote role-playing state. So whereas the battle map and the battle system will be turn-based, as one might expect from a tactical kind of RPG, everything is structured. It's your turn, it's the enemy's turn, it's the neutral turn, so on and so forth. With exploration and role-playing, they might be able to explore these maps kind of Shadowrun style, where you can run around, take a look. You're free to look where you want. There might be NPCs to talk to. I'm not entirely set on this one, but we'll see. If I can swing telling a decent story with just this, then we can have 2 and then expand it as need be. So one of the defining characteristics of a state machine is how they transition from state to state. So you could have them, oh wow, those are absolutely terrible. Let's do this. They would go from here to here to here based on specific things. So like, for instance, oh, look at that. If you ever need a decent diagramming program for any number of purposes, draw.io. Absolutely worth it. So, for instance, to get from our menu to a battle map, we might be on the mission menu. So we select mission or start game, which would lead us into this. That's how we transition from that state to the other. We could have... I don't like that places that there. It goes back. And this is press pause or open character menu. Just to differentiate these two. So to transition from this state to this state, you'd select the mission, start the game, so on and so forth. To transition from this state to this state, that's when you press pause, you open a character menu, any number of things. A game, or in this case a finite state machine, can only be in one of these at any time. You don't have 2 states blending together. If we're thinking about going to exploration to the battle map, this could be something as simple as finished the level or fight. Oh, this is pretty juicy for some things, but I'm not amazing for it. So that's how we get from that to that, and then we could just copy and paste this one. Boy. Wow, we just like ripped a piece of that off. Let's try that one more time, this time with feeling. Okay. Cool, that generally works. Same kind of deal, getting from here to here. We would trigger it that way. Keeping in mind that this is an extremely rough layout of how we'd go from here to there. I am not thrilled that that is going that direction. There we go. Maybe not as. There we go. Clarity. I like it. Oh. We're putting that text there anyway. This is gonna mix it. I would like to redo this text. Cool, that's cool. I don't want to do that. There we go. So in this case, an example of this would be talk to an NPC, start a fight. once again, we could also do it this way. I wanted to, there we go. This could be a lot more flowing. This is my Godot interpretation and super janky, but this basically lays out how we would look at setting the game up. So what we would do, or what we're going to do, is start with one of these states. Create each of these as a scene. So basically when we have our root scene, which right now we'll get rid of this because it's our one that we aren't using. So we have our main scene. Normally I would think to put the viewport in here, and the viewport is what you would use to display anything on screen. But I think we'll give each viewport to each state. So they'll each have their own viewport. And then they can control everything that's on the screen, and then we don't have to worry about whacking things on and off. So if we do this, let's just use this for now, and I'll clean it up for the posterity later. But we could do it like this. I think that'll work. Yeah, that's what I'm going to stick with. So we would need 3 scenes in this case, and we're going to start with battle map because I think that's the most interesting one to start on. Everybody wants to move straight into combat systems. Getting one of those rolling would probably be great. And the sooner we can get one of our test screens on there, the better. We get one rolling, get a viewport going, get that test map that I've developed in here, which will probably be cleaned up a little bit so that we can test one thing at a time. Start from there. Then we can start making things fight, start setting out rules and such as that. Let's add that into our like. For quick recap of what we just did, we're going to add 3 primary game states. Battle map, exploration, and menu. I'm gonna leave the menu to last most likely because that's quote unquote easy, because it will take the least amount of work to get to where we need to go, because it's basically a state controller. It's going to put us here, or it's going to put us here, or it's going to put us there. Doesn't really matter. We're starting with the battle map. All right, that's a good start, I think. In terms of what I'm looking for the game, I don't know the best way to illustrate it, so we'll just give it a talk. I have, as I said last time, developed, or am developing because English, a cyberpunk-esque fantasy setting. So it will be not fantasy in this style of here's dwarves and elves and all sorts of fantastical races, and there may or may not be swords. We'll see. I don't know. Everybody wants swords, but I haven't decided if they fit into what I've written so far. But the basic premise is that the digital world, thinking like Ron or Sword Art Online, or just like the game world, like everything that exists in digital space, the inside of your computer, the internet, all that, wasn't something we developed. It wasn't something that was created by people that we mistakenly thought we did. The idea is that when we began making computer networks and attaching them, and Wi-Fi and signals, including radio and such, we weren't occupying a new space. We had actually just tapped into an old space. The idea that it's always been there and it's been used through many different names, that it could be the afterlife, it could be, quote, heaven or hell, it could be the ethereal plane, it's been gone by many names. Basically the source of all the cool and mysterious crap that we can't explain. In light of that, there's been an event, and we're still nailing down the timeline of that event, because obviously this is still a work in progress. But at some point we established global networking, which basically shunted this world, this other plane, into our plane. All of a sudden, things that programmers could do, or things that nerds can do, or all sorts of electronic devices weren't just interacting in this digital space, they were having tangible, real effects. This is the basis for, like, the magic system. Being that it is cyberpunk, my first thought when I was thinking about this was, we have this cool, untapped power. Anybody with tech savvy and other things, which we'll get into later, anybody with tech savvy can basically do magic. You can do fantastical effects by using your technical prowess to, quote, code into reality. So naturally, what's going to happen with rampant capitalism and corporations is that shit got locked down immediately. Only the rich have unfettered access to this. You need the best equipment, you need the best, subscription plan in order to be able to use these fantastical abilities and tap into this overall network. And you're being charged a premium every time you do something, which leads into the idea of a magic point system. So rather than having MP, I envision something like bandwidth, kind of similar to how ISPs work nowadays. I have a limited amount of bandwidth, which, if you're unfamiliar, if you're from a country that doesn't have shitty ISPs, in Canada, most places don't have infinite bandwidth for a month. Quite a bit, and it's gotten quite a bit better. But for instance, let's say I run through, I don't even remember what my cap is. Let's say I run through a terabyte of data in a month of I'm just re-downloading Destiny or World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy over and over and over again. Once I hit my cap, they can either choose to throttle me or cut me off entirely. I thought, what if we applied that principle to rampant capitalism and magic? So, rich people have fuck tons of bandwidth. They get to do whatever they want. They can constantly work with it. Poor people, if they have any, the underrepresented classes, anything. If they have any, it's not much and it's very ineffectual. If you're unfamiliar with the general cyberpunk genre, I guess we'll call it, it's always been about slightly dystopian or considerably dystopian, and it's usually a political message or a political stance or a political look at things. Like Shadowrun is a good example. In Shadowrun, you see corporations have basically taken over most governments in the world. They do anything they want to. Assassinations, corporate warfare, actual warfare. They control governments, they control cities, stuff like that. It's like, what if we took the idea of things that are happening or could theoretically happen and take them to a relatively big extreme? So I feel like that magic system fits in fairly well. I haven't decided exactly what form this will take. Is this going to be extremely fantastical stuff like, oh, I just programmed a fireball, get wrecked? Or is it going to be more along the lines of, I modified something in my environment to give me an advantage? As well, the idea that we shunted this world together and merged it, I like the idea of people existing on two different levels. So we have our corporeal body, flesh and blood. I stab you, you bleed, blah, blah, blah. But you also have your, like, I guess the concept of a soul that is attached to this immaterial plane, this digital plane, if it were. And it can be affected by this kind of stuff. So like maybe I rewrite something in your quote code and it damages you, or stuff like that is what I was dragging through. Since it's not super far in the future, because I'm not looking for sci-fi, I'm looking for the near future. I'm not sure about the technology level. I'm not sure if we're gonna go through like decking equipment and cyber decks and the, you know, all that cool stuff that shit like Shadowrun or Cyberpunk 2077 have. I would like cybernetics and augmentation to play a big role, because I've always liked the appeal of them as the have and have not. Being personally of the belief that I cannot wait for cybernetics to be widespread, and I think it is the next step in humanity. Controversial point, I get that. I think it'd be cool to explore those kinds of themes. Yeah. Pretty good summary of everything I have so far. I've written a few chapters of I guess we'll call it novella. I don't know what form it's going to take yet. I'm kind of just enjoying the writing of it and adapting it to this. It's not going to be the same story, but the general setting will remain. If you have any comments on it, absolutely feel free to start a discussion. I would love to hear feedback. Definitely don't want to just exist in an echo chamber, because if something I say sounds really stupid, I would like to know. I'd like to take a look at it. We can talk about why it sounds stupid. We can talk about why it sounds really fucking cool and one of the most badass ideas you ever heard. But yeah, feel free to comment on that. Setting wise, that's what we covered. Covered how we're going to lay out the project, fundamentals on there. So I guess laying out a little bit of, since we're going to start on the battle map, the combat side of things. I obviously am taking extreme inspiration from stuff such as Final Fantasy Tactics, obviously Shadowrun, because I keep bringing it up, because if you haven't played Shadowrun, go do it. Shadowrun Hong Kong and Shadowrun not Dragonfall. Dragonfall? I don't remember, but the Shadowrun, the first one that starts in Seattle, one in Hong Kong. I think it's Dragonfall. Yeah, go play those games. They are small scale, quote, indie developed tactical RPG games set in the Shadowrun universe by Harebrained Studios? Or Harebrained Schemes? Harebrained Studios. Absolutely worth a good play. Great story. You just gotta love to read, because you're gonna read a lot. I've been playing a little bit of Cyberpunk as what I have tried to position as studying, but is really just I wanted to play an RPG. I've been taking some cool stuff from that. It's a really, really good game. If you haven't played that yet, since it's at its set of patches, I would definitely recommend on that one. Setting wise, I think that's pretty decent rundown. Combat wise, I want to keep things as active as possible. So I'm looking to kind of emulate Legend of Dragoon, if you haven't seen it. So a quick rundown on that. When you normally attack, and I wish I had a drawing tool. Next time we're going to look at a drawing tool for this. Let's bring up Aseprite and do that. All right. So in Legend of Dragoon, it was a turn-based RPG done by Sony? Yeah, done by Sony. Had one of the best mechanics, I thought, for making basic attacks not shit. So, we need that to be way thicker than she is. And we are not great at drawing. So you have a person here. Your guy with his sword. and your enemy over here. Anytime you hit the basic attack, you would get a prompt on the screen, basically the precursor to QTEs, where it'd be like circle, and then it would have a square that would slowly expand in, or a circle, I guess it didn't really matter. I think it was mostly squares. And basically when it got to the same size, you wanted to press the button, and it'd be a combination of square and circle and X, because this is not a square, this is a square, because we're a little dumb sometimes. I want to implement something like that to give kind of a fighting game quick time event feel, to make basic attacks not boring. Anytime you've started a new RPG, you think Final Fantasy 3, Final Fantasy 6, Persona is this way. When's the last time you used the basic attack in Persona? It's boring to press that. If you press magic, it does cool shit, it looks fun, great. I just blew somebody up with a nuclear bomb. You press an attack, like, oh, I walked up and I stabbed him. There's nothing really active in that. Having the quick time events and with different combinations, with different skill levels and different power levels, I guess. Let's say we do one that's a 5-point spread. So we got to hit X and then square times 2, and then, oh my god, circle times 2, square times 2. Boom. We have a really big combo, kind of like Tekken feeling. And you do a ton of damage, but if you screw up at here, you don't get the cool animation, but you still do damage. Because I'm big in the idea of accessibility as well, I'm also going to have the feature to turn that off. So if you wanted to not work with that or engage with that system at all, we turn it off and they would just do the animations and be done with it. Because it's a single player game, nobody gives a shit about cheating in single player games. It doesn't really bother me if somebody turns it off, because it's easier to do than the other one, and it's just optimal damage. Like, power to you. It's your game. Have fun with it. I think it's a neat factor for keeping things engaging. In terms of magic, as we talked about with bandwidth being the magic point stand-in, we might look at doing stuff active for that too. I don't know how much more differentiated we could get it. I wouldn't go as far as like, hey, draw this diagram or draw this display thing like Harry Potter used to do back in the day when you're doing spells. I don't know if we'd go that far. I think the thing I'm looking at with magic systems is I'm looking to have a keyword system. So if you're unfamiliar with stuff like Path of Exile is really good for this because their gems all have a keyword. Let's actually take a quick look at that. So this is where I'm taking primary inspiration from for this one. This is not gems, and I want to know it's skill gems. I just want a list of gems. Let's do, oh my god, people. This list of gems, rewarded from quests, whatever. Barrage is a cool one. So if you can see up top here, it has 3 different keywords. It has attack, projectile, and bow. Basically, this means any other skill that does something that involves those. So like this one has fires 4 additional projectiles. So in this case, it would fire 4 additional projectiles. But if you were to have a piece of equipment that has, or a skill on the skill tree that says you fire 3 additional projectiles, and then you were to take barrage, this one, as you can see, it fires 4 additional plus that 3, because it hits that keyword, would then fire 7 projectiles, which is really cool. Thinking about this from the settings point of view, I would love to have it as basically slotted in code. It'd be really cool for it to be like, if you're implementing a damage spell, it'll be like enemy dot damage, stuff like that. This is like a really, really basic thing. So it could be like I slot in the keyword dark, and then we would enemy dot dark dot damage, and it would deal damage. Or even using it as an argument, I guess let's reframe that: enemy dot damage dark. So now you're doing like dark element damage. Not that there is going to be dark element. I just thought it was a cool word to use at the time. The idea that you could then have different arguments and maybe different key, like different functions, would be cool to do it like that, where I can slot in enemy dot effect, and you can have a damage dark, and then armor sunder. If you're not familiar, I am Canadian, so expect to see some U's where you're not normally gonna get it. Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. And then have different stuff like that. I don't know if they're all gonna be arguments. I think it'd be cool to have different effects, like enemy is just your target. This could be another set of keywords, and the idea that I want them to be unlockable and collectible, even though that I think is a really loaded term. When I say collectible, I mean similar to how you would get magic in like Final Fantasy 3, where you were Final Fantasy 5, where you had to buy that stuff. Is you've learned this keyword and now you can implement it in your quote programs when attacking. I think that would be pretty neat. That's what I'm aiming for, to keep the magic system interesting. So our two pillars of the combat, if you're unfamiliar with the pillars, would be like the design choices. So engaging basic attacks, varied magic system, and last one, and less interesting but still important, is useful items / equipment. I do not want stat-based equipment. I do not want equipment that just exists because it's better. So I don't want a dagger and then iron dagger +2. I don't want it to just be better because it has higher numbers. I want it to be better because it does something different. If you look at Final Fantasy VII Remake, it's really good about that. Every weapon that you get isn't a strictly better upgrade. It just has different skills attached to it, and you can mix and match and pull skills off and do stuff like that. I think that's a really cool way to go about it, rather than just everything's a strict upgrade. So that is our combat idea for designing like the combat system. We want to follow these 3 pillars, which is the important part.